In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed so fast that even its own leaders woke up confused. One day it was a superpower rivaling America, and the next it was a historical footnote. To understand this vanishing act, we rewind to 1917 and a revolution fueled by war and hunger. Vladimir Lenin promised bread, peace, and power to the people, and millions believed him. The new Soviet state centralized everything, from factories to opinions, like a giant nationalized group chat. After Lenin died, Joseph Stalin took control with paranoia, purges, and a mustache history remembers. Stalin industrialized rapidly, but at the cost of millions of lives and a culture of fear. World War II temporarily masked problems as the USSR defeated Nazi Germany at enormous human cost. Victory brought prestige, territory, and confidence, but also exhaustion and deep economic scars. During the Cold War, the Soviet system competed globally while quietly failing at home. Central planning looked efficient on paper, but struggled to produce shoes that actually fit people. Innovation lagged, shelves emptied, and citizens joked that capitalism had better breadlines. Leaders rotated through old men clinging to power like broken furniture. Nobody wanted to move. By the 1980s, oil prices fell, draining the state's main source of hard currency. The Afghan War bled money and morale, becoming the Soviet version of a bad, endless road trip. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became leader and realized the system was quietly imploding. He introduced perestroika, meaning economic restructuring, which sounded hopeful but confused everyone involved. Factories gained freedom without guidance, like removing traffic lights during rush hour. Gorbachev also launched glasnost, allowing open discussion, criticism, and long-silenced anger. Suddenly, newspapers printed truths people had whispered for decades in kitchens. Citizens learned about mass graves, lies, and economic mismanagement, and trust evaporated fast. National republics began asking an awkward question: why are we still part of this? Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia remembered independence and wanted their old lives back. Gorbachev thought openness would save the Union, but it instead exposed structural rot. Meanwhile, conservative elites feared losing power and whispered about restoring order. In August 1991, hardliners launched a coup while Gorbachev vacationed, which was terrible timing. Tanks rolled into Moscow, but soldiers looked uncertain, like they forgot the script. Boris Yeltsin climbed a tank and declared defiance, becoming an accidental action hero. Crowds protected soldiers hesitated, and the coup collapsed within 3 days. The failed coup shattered any remaining authority of the Communist Party. Republics declared independence rapidly, like dominoes discovering gravity. Ukraine voted overwhelmingly to leave, and without Ukraine, the Union made no sense. Gorbachev tried to negotiate a new federation, but history had already changed channels. On December 8, 1991, leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus met secretly in a forest. They signed documents dissolving the Soviet Union without consulting its president. Yes, an empire ended over paperwork and polite signatures. On December 25th, Gorbachev resigned on television, looking tired and profoundly betrayed by reality. The Soviet flag lowered from the Kremlin for the last time, replaced by Russia's tricolor. 15 new countries emerged, each scrambling to define borders, identities, and economies. Overnight, millions became foreigners without moving an inch. The Soviet military, once terrifying, found itself unpaid and uncertain who it served. Nuclear weapons suddenly belonged to multiple states, making diplomats lose sleep globally. Economically, the transition was brutal, with inflation devouring savings like a hungry animal. Factories closed, life expectancy dropped, and nostalgia quickly replaced revolutionary optimism. Many Russians asked how a superpower collapsed without losing a war. The answer lies in ignored corruption, rigid bureaucracy, and leaders fearing truth. External pressure mattered, but internal decay did most of the damage. The system discouraged honesty, so problems grew until they became unstoppable. Loyalty faded when promises failed, and daily life felt like a constant compromise. When belief disappears, power structures become hollow shells. Yeltsin wanted power, not stability, and grabbed the moment decisively. Ordinary people wanted dignity, food, and hope, not ideology. The Soviet collapse shocked the world because it looked permanent until it wasn't. Empires often fall quietly, not with explosions, but with exhaustion. Strength without adaptability becomes weakness over time. Fear can enforce control, but it cannot inspire loyalty forever. Economic reality eventually ignores propaganda entirely. The Soviet Union vanished not overnight, but suddenly enough to feel like magic. America celebrated victory, while wondering how it happened so fast. Former Soviet states spent decades rebuilding identities and institutions. Russia inherited power, trauma, and unresolved questions about greatness. The lesson remains painfully relevant in every era. No empire is immune to its own contradictions. When leaders stop listening, collapse begins quietly. When citizens stop believing, collapse accelerates rapidly. External enemies matter less than internal honesty. The Soviet Union fell because it forgot why people obey in the first place. And that is why even the mightiest empires can vanish almost overnight.